NCAA basketball season started a couple of Mondays back, and St. Mary's Gales tipped off at home, beating St. Thomas, Minnesota. I didn't see the game, but that was easy information to find out and is cut and dry. With the internet and decent record keeping back in the day, it shouldn't be that hard to find out who was the first to do something. But sometimes I'll ask Google what seems like a straightforward question like, who is the true home run king? Got two answers. I then asked, is OJ guilty of murder? Again, two answers. So for today's show, I asked Google, who was the first black high school basketball coach in California? It said, it might be Willie Wise. Might? Might is like a maybe. But from what I gathered, today's man of the moment predates Willie Wise by a few years. But it's one of those things I can't get a definitive answer to or a guarantee. And if you think about it, Hank Aaron got out of serving in the military, whereas Willie Mays missed over 250 games while serving in the Army and could easily have been the home run king. When it comes to the 1955 basketball season at St. Mary's College in Moraga, California, there's three things I can guarantee. They didn't have a three-point line, a shot clock, or a player with long hair. Things change over time. Rules, culture, styles. Now when I turn on the local news, the anchorman doesn't even wear a tie. Just as bad, all the jocks on the weekend shows in bad taste suits wearing tennis shoes. What some people try to pass off as style, really, is just a loss of decorum and the decline of Western civilization. It used to be go to any airport and every person would be dressed up in their good clothes. And another thing, normally my brother Ed would chime in right here, but he didn't show up today. He's mad I didn't do my research and instead went with my memory when, in my Bob Wade episode, I wrongfully blamed the Cincinnati Bengals as being spineless when really it was the Pittsburgh Steelers who were. That's a big mistake and ruins the show's credibility, which I already lost in my first, third, and possibly fifth marriages. It was my loyal viewer, Math Bowler, who tried to point out my mistake. Took me a couple of days to figure out I blamed the wrong NFL organization. Moral of the story, don't go by memory. What you think you know might be wrong, or you're mixed up. I was both in this case. This show is dedicated to all the teachers and coaches out there. Thank you for your service. Where was I? Oh yeah, and another thing. Back in the 60s, nobody wore sweats in public, and normally you wouldn't see people in restaurants wearing jeans. Back then, you were allowed to smoke cigarettes everywhere you wanted to, except when pumping gas and while in surgery. And every establishment had at least one cigarette machine. So it's a trade-off. Well-dressed civil citizens who you can have a casual conversation with no matter what political party you belong to, or what we have today, where you can't tell who's a bum and who isn't, because in some cases they look the same. Me, I prefer a well-dressed population. As for cigarettes, you get used to the smell. So let's go. Once again, back to Fresno, California to meet a farm boy named Odell Johnson, nicknamed Odie, a college basketball player who has no Wikipedia site. Don't know his date of birth or if he's still alive. Basketball Reference lists him at 6'1", but back in 2015, Odell himself said at 80 years old he's still 6'2.5". The same as the 2 seasons on the St. Mary's Gales basketball team between 1955 and 1957, and he still looked to be his cager weight of 155 pounds, like when the 21-year-old stepped onto the Madigan gym floor at St. Mary's College. Odell Johnson is one of 10 children who grew up in rural Arkansas. His dad was a farm worker who moved his family first to the farms of Southern California, but settled in the middle of the state, working the fields of Fresno. Odell said, "I'm proud of my family from whence we came. It's quite a story." Young Odell worked in the fields as a fruit picker, just like everyone else. They slept 3 to a bed, saying, "We didn't know any different." He was a freshman at Fresno City College and still worked in the fields, saying, "You're embarrassed. You didn't want anyone to know." After his sophomore year at Fresno City Junior College, where he averaged 29 points per game, Odell got a visit from St. Mary's College alum John Henning, who asked Odell to play basketball and get a degree. Odell said, "We came up for a visit and I thought, this is for me. It was a small school of 400 students at the time, just what I needed. I was poor, I was shy, I was unsure of myself. moving from school to school, being the poor kid in the group. I am deeply indebted to St. Mary's and the Christian brothers who took me under their wing, unquote. He played in every basketball game for 2 seasons at St. Mary's in one of the best conferences in the country, averaging 16 points and nearly 8 rebounds per game. His best game was January 7th, 1956, when he scored 40 points against the Pepperdine Waves, the greatest scoring performance in school history, and that was without a three-point shot. He was first team All-CBA in 1956 and first team All-West Coast Athletic Conference in 1957. The stats for the 1956 California Basketball Association show USF legend Bill Russell's name first for everything, except free throws. That spot belongs to Odell Johnson. After graduating in 1958, like they do, St. Mary's arranged a job for Odell back home in Fresno as a math teacher at San Joaquin Memorial, a private Catholic high school where Odell Johnson became the first black high school basketball coach in California. He was there 4 years before moving on to a job at Fresno School District. Odell was appointed executive director of Trinity Street Community Center, selected as one of the top programs in the nation by President Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty program. In 1967, Odell received an Urban Services Award from Vice President Hubert Humphrey. In 1968, he returned to St. Mary's as the school's request as Dean of Men. 2 years later, they accepted girls and was now Dean of Student Affairs, making him one of only 4 black persons in the country to hold this position. The small school had 7 black students in 1968. In 1972, Odell Johnson's 4-year contract with the school was not renewed. Tensions had been simmering among minorities at the school, and some saw that as the last straw. 5 black players on the Gales basketball team refused to play the second half of a game against Santa Clara in protest, supporting the first administrator of color at St. Mary's. One of the Gales players said this: "It was planned out, but we didn't know how significant it was going to be. Odell Johnson and many of the other staff had played a significant role in our lives and caring for us. And so we were willing to take a risk." The players were kicked off the team, but Odell Johnson made sure they all retained their scholarships and all graduated, with most becoming educators in the Bay Area. 3 other quotes from Gales players. "We went through with it because of our love for that man. He was our dad, our big brother, our friend. I was just in awe of Odell Johnson. He was so cool. He was my idol." After that game, many students fasted and slept in the chapel pews at St. Mary's Church. One of their demands was minority representation at the school. Odell said, "St. Mary's was pretty much a white school. The world is changing all around the college, and I said I don't think that St. Mary's is ready for that. There was a lot of pressure. I'm proud the way it happened with class and dignity. They shut the whole campus down for 8 days, students and faculty. They wanted me to stay, but it was time for me to move on," unquote. Odell Johnson told the school they needed to change with the times and hire 2 minority assistant deans. Eventually, they did. 50 years later, Odell himself said, "In the end, it turned out okay. I observed changes taking place the whole time, my whole 4 years as the dean. I'm proud of every moment of it." He moved on to vice president for instruction at the College of Alameda for 7 years, but his longest tenure as a teacher was 18 years at the first black president of Laney College in Oakland. The campus theater at Laney was renamed to the Odell Johnson Performing Arts Center in his honor and is a focal point of the school. All of us here at Souvenir Programs here would like to send our condolences to the friends and family of Laney College football coach John Beam, who was shot and killed by a crazy man a couple of days ago while at the school. Another senseless loss of a long-time cherished community leader, something in high demand and sadly there are not enough of. St. Mary's season opener. The one in the middle is the last game of the regular season. The one on the right is when USF won the championship. In 2006, Odell Johnson was given the Leadership Award by the National Council for Black American Affairs. The year 2007 marked the 100th year of men's basketball at St. Mary's, and Odell was named to the Student Athlete All-Century team. He was named to the Fresno Athletic Hall of Fame in 2010, the WCC Hall of Honor in 2015, and in 2016 named St. Mary's College Alumni of the Year. His commitment to students led to the school's establishment of the Odell Johnson Jr. Endowed Scholarship Fund to support black undergraduate students, with Odell saying, "It was the most wonderful thing for me. I loved the work. I can do my best work with the poor and disenfranchised students in terms of letting them know they can make it." Odell is a member of the St. Mary's Athletic Hall of Fame, served on the school's alumni board of directors, and currently serves on the board of regents. As of 2016, Odell and Virginia Johnson have been married for over 6 decades and still live in the house they bought in Oakland back in 1969. While 6 of his 9 siblings got cancer, Odell hasn't. He hits the gym, lifts weights, and rides a stationary bike, and it wasn't too long ago you could see him jogging around Lake Merritt in Oakland. When it comes to basketball memories, Odell can tell you exactly how many fans were at the Cow Palace for the last game of the 1955-56 NCAA regular season when St. Mary's played Bill Russell and the USF Dons. He said, 15,735 fans, largest crowd ever on the West Coast at the time. There were no pro teams on the West Coast then, said Odell. And Odell didn't know it, but 2 of those fans in attendance were my dad and my grandpa. I was actually glad I couldn't find an obituary for Mr. Odell Johnson. After seeing his 2016 interview, I'd say he's still around. Odell grew up in a time when it wasn't easy being poor and a minority, but made a better life for himself and many others along the way as an educator and mentor, with some of those carrying on the tradition as teachers and community leaders, many with personal stories about what a great man he is. So I will leave you today with the words from the kid who came from Arkansas and worked in the fields of California. I came out of a migrant farm worker situation with my family. Basketball got me out. Life has been good. Everything that happened has turned out into a positive. I feel guilty my life has been so wonderful. Why me? Unquote. Having a wonderful life in some cases comes from being a wonderful person. And there's a long line of people who will say Odell Johnson is a wonderful person.